My ex-mother-in-law barged into my engagement party and announced that my ex-husband was half-brother to my current boyfriend. So I did this. I, 26F, was married to my ex-husband, Andy, 27M, for a year and a half before we separated. Our marriage was a roller coaster from the start, filled with more downs than ups. We met in college during our sophomore year. I was the bookish type, always with my nose in a book, while Andy was the life of the party. They say opposites attract, and in our case, it seemed true at first. We dated for 2 years before Andy proposed. It was a whirlwind romance, and looking back, I realized we were both too young and naive to understand the complexities of marriage. We thought love would conquer all, but life had other plans. The problem started almost immediately after we moved in together post-wedding. Our different lifestyles, which we once found charming about each other, became a source of constant tension. I'm an early bird, up at 6 a.m. even on weekends, ready to begin the day. Andy, on the other hand, would often stumble home at 3 a.m. from a night out with friends and sleep until noon. I'd try to wake him up, arguing that we were wasting the day. He'd get irritated, saying I was too bothered and needed to learn to relax. This pattern repeated itself almost every weekend, with neither of us willing to compromise. Our financial habits were another major point of dispute. I'm a planner and a saver. I had dreams of us buying a house, starting a family, and building a stable future. Andy lived for the moment. He'd spend on the latest gadgets, designer clothes, and expensive nights out, arguing that we were young and should enjoy life. I still remember the day I found out about his secret credit card. I was cleaning our apartment and came across a statement hidden in his desk drawer. My heart sank as I saw the balance, $15,000. When I confronted Andy, he brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal and he'd pay it off eventually. But to me, it was a huge breach of trust. Our communication styles clashed terribly too. When we fought, which was often, I wanted to hash things out immediately. I believed in talking through our problems, finding solutions, and moving forward. Andy, however, would shut down completely. He'd give me the silent treatment for days, refusing to engage in any form of conversation. This only made me more anxious and frustrated, leading to even bigger blow-ups when he finally decided to talk. We tried couples counseling, but it felt like too little. Too late. In the sessions, it became clear that we had fundamentally different values and life goals. The counselor suggested we try to find common ground, but it felt like we were speaking different languages. The final straw came about a year into our marriage. I had been pushing for us to start saving for a house, but Andy kept deflecting. One day, I decided to go through our finances in detail. What I found left me cold. Not only had Andy maxed out multiple credit cards, but he had also taken out a personal loan without telling me. We were in debt to the tune of nearly $50,000. When I talked about this with Andy, instead of showing remorse, he got defensive. He accused me of snooping and said I was too controlling. That was the moment I realized our marriage was beyond saving. We had lost all trust and respect for each other. The decision to separate wasn't easy, but I knew it was necessary. Andy half-heartedly suggested we try to work things out, but I could see his heart wasn't in it. Deep down, I think we both knew we had made a mistake rushing into marriage. My mother-in-law, Sandra, took the news of our separation hard. She was a traditional, conservative woman who believed marriage was a sacred, lifelong commitment. In her eyes, divorce was never an option, no matter how unhappy the couple might be. Sandra started calling me daily, lecturing me about the importance of working through marital problems. She'd say things like, "Marriage isn't supposed to be easy, dear. It takes work and sacrifice." When I tried to explain our issues, she'd dismiss them as young people problems that we could overcome if we just tried harder. As the divorce proceedings began, Sandra's attitude towards me grew increasingly aggressive. She accused me of giving up too easily and breaking her son's heart. The last time I saw her, at the courthouse after our divorce was finalized, she looked me in the eye and said, "You'll regret this. You'll never find someone who loves you like my Andy did." Her words stung, but I knew in my heart that ending the marriage was the right decision. Still, to escape the negativity and start fresh, I decided to move to a different city. I cut all contact with Andy and his family, blocked their numbers, and unfriended them on social media. It was time for a new chapter in my life. The first few months in the new city were tough. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to keep busy and push thoughts of my failed marriage out of my mind. Slowly but surely, I started to rebuild my life. I made new friends, took up new hobbies, and began to rediscover who I was as an individual, not as someone's wife. About a year after the move, my colleague invited me to a house party. That's where I met Gerard, 27M. He was charming, intelligent, and had a great sense of humor. We spent the entire evening talking, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of excitement. Gerard and I started dating, and it was like a breath of fresh air after my chaotic marriage. We shared similar values and life goals. He was financially responsible, a great communicator, and respected my need for independence. Most importantly, we brought out the best in each other. After a year of dating, Gerard proposed. It wasn't a grand, showy gesture like Andy's proposal had been. Instead, it was intimate and meaningful. He had prepared a picnic in the park where we had our first date, and as the sun was setting, he got down on one knee and asked me to spend the rest of my life with him. Without hesitation, I said yes. We decided to have an engagement party to celebrate with our friends and family. I was excited but also nervous about our families meeting for the first time. Gerard's parents were coming from out of town, and my parents were driving up for the weekend. The party was in full swing, and everything was going perfectly. Our families seemed to be getting along well, and I was finally starting to relax and enjoy myself. That's when everything went sideways. I was chatting with some friends when I heard a commotion at the entrance. I turned to look, and my blood ran cold. There, pushing past the confused guests, was my ex-mother-in-law, Sandra. She looked furious, her face red and her eyes blazing. Before I could react, she marched up to where Gerard and I were standing. She pointed at Gerard and shouted, "You can't marry her. Andy is your half-brother. Your father had an affair with me 27 years ago." The room fell silent. I felt like I was in a bad dream. I looked at Gerard, hoping to see confusion or disbelief on his face. Instead, I saw shock and recognition. His parents, who had been standing nearby, had gone pale. Gerard's father, Tom, was the first to break the silence. "Sandra," he said, his voice shaking. "What are you doing here? How did you find out about this party?" Sandra laughed bitterly. "Does it matter? What matters is that you've been lying all these years. Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? That I wouldn't recognize your son's name when I heard about the engagement?"